She wasn't supposed to win, but one head kick changed everything. Holly Holm silenced Ronda Rousey and shocked the world. Overnight, she was a global icon, the preacher's daughter turned legend. But what came after wasn't triumph, it was struggle. And recently, Holly revealed the darker truth about life at the top, the crushing pressure, the doubts, and the battles no one saw outside the octagon. In this video, we'll break down exactly what she exposed and why her story is more complicated and more inspiring than just one unforgettable knockout. Holly Holm was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in 1981, the youngest of 3 children in a devout Christian family. Her father, Roger, was a preacher. Her mother, Tammy, a massage therapist. From the beginning, faith, discipline, and family shaped Holly's world. She grew up in the pews of her father's church, earning the nickname she'd later carry into the fight world, the preacher's daughter. But beneath the wholesome label was a restless competitor. As a child, she was athletic and stubborn, drawn to competition in every form. She tried swimming, gymnastics, soccer, you name it, Holly gave it a go. It wasn't just about winning, it was about challenging herself, testing her limits. She didn't shrink from pressure, she leaned into it. At 16, Holly discovered cardio kickboxing. It was the spark that changed her life. Within a year, her trainers recognized her raw potential. She had quick feet, a natural sense of timing, and perhaps most importantly, an almost obsessive work ethic. Holly Holm wasn't the type to quit after class. She'd stay, drill, and demand extra rounds until she was drenched in sweat. From there, she transitioned into amateur boxing. What started as a fitness activity became a career path. She quickly rose through the amateur ranks, earning the attention of promoters and coaches who saw in her a rare blend of technical discipline and fearless aggression. Her early years weren't glamorous. She balanced school, jobs, and long hours in the gym, grinding day after day. Her family watched in equal parts awe and concern. Boxing was dangerous, punishing, but Holly reassured them with her calm determination. For her, this wasn't rebellion, it was calling. The discipline instilled in her as a preacher's daughter had found a new outlet, the ring. And by the early 2000s, Holly Holm wasn't just training anymore, she was winning. Before the UFC knew her, Holly Holm was already a world champion, multiple times over. Between 2001 and 2013, she fought 38 times in professional boxing, amassing an incredible record of 33 wins. She held titles in 3 weight divisions, establishing herself as one of the most decorated female boxers of her era. Her style was precise and clinical. She wasn't reckless, didn't chase knockouts. Instead, she relied on footwork, angles, and a punishing left hand that broke down opponents round after round. Promoters called her the Queen of Boxing, and in Albuquerque, she was a local hero long before MMA fame. But while her hands earned her belts, the grind behind the scenes carried a darker truth. Boxing, especially women's boxing at the time, didn't offer the money or exposure men receive. Holm fought for peanuts compared to her male counterparts, often risking everything for scraps. Titles didn't guarantee financial stability. Fame didn't erase sacrifice. She pushed through injuries, broken ribs, bruised faces, and exhaustion. She juggled multiple jobs to make ends meet, sometimes working at her mother's salon between training sessions. Every victory came at a price, physically and emotionally. By 2012, despite her accolades, Holly felt the toll. Boxing had given her glory, but not security. And deep down, she was restless again. The discipline remained, but the fire wanted something more. She began training in MMA, seeing it not only as the future of women's combat sports, but also as a chance to prove herself all over again. Her decision shocked the boxing community. Why abandon a sport where she was already royalty to start over as a rookie in a cage? Critics called it foolish. But Holly saw the bigger picture. She didn't just want to be remembered as a great boxer. She wanted to challenge herself on the biggest stage of all, mixed martial arts. And so, with gloves set aside, she entered a new arena, ready to risk her reputation for the chance to build something greater. By 2015, Holly Holm had made her way into the UFC. She was undefeated in MMA, But skeptics still dismissed her. They said she was just a boxer, a paper contender thrown to the wolves. And the biggest wolf of them all was Ronda Rousey. At the time, Rousey was untouchable, 12-0, the face of women's MMA, a mainstream star who'd finished nearly every opponent in the first round. When the UFC announced Holm would face Rousey at UFC 193, the reaction was brutal. Fans called it a mismatch. Analysts said Holm wouldn't survive a round, but Holly was calm. She knew she wasn't Rousey's equal in judo, but she trusted her striking and her discipline. At the weigh-ins, when Rousey snarled and screamed, Holly didn't flinch. It wasn't arrogance, it was focus. She had spent her entire career preparing for pressure moments, and this was the biggest of all. On November 14, 2015, in Melbourne, Australia, in front of a record crowd of 56,000 fans, the world witnessed one of the greatest upsets in MMA history. From the opening bell, Holm dismantled Rousey's aura. She used perfect footwork, slip punches, and peppered Rousey with clean shots. The champion grew frustrated, wild, desperate. Then came the finish. In the second round, Rousey charged forward. Holm slipped, pivoted, and unleashed a left head kick that landed flush. Rousey crumpled, unconscious, before she hit the mat. The crowd exploded. Holly Holm had done the impossible. The moment was immortal, replayed across the globe, dissected by media outlets, and celebrated as one of the most iconic knockouts in UFC history. Holm, the underdog, the quiet preacher's daughter, had dethroned the unstoppable queen. But beneath the triumph lay the first hints of the dark truth Holly would later reveal: that one moment of glory can change your life, but it can also weigh you down forever. The victory was her greatest high, but it was also the beginning of her greatest struggles. The knockout of Ronda Rousey at UFC 193 was the kind of moment fighters dream of, a victory so iconic that it lives forever. But for Holly Holm, it was both triumph and trap. Overnight, she went from underdog to global superstar. Her quiet life in Albuquerque was gone, replaced by camera flashes, interviews, endless media requests. Sponsors lined up. The UFC hailed her as the face of a new era. But behind the applause, Holly felt the crushing weight of expectation. She wasn't just the woman who beat Ronda Rousey. She was now expected to stay the woman who beat Ronda Rousey. Every opponent moving forward would come at her with everything. The belt around her waist was heavy, not just with gold, but with the burden of defending it. The truth she later admitted in interviews was raw. She felt overwhelmed, even lonely at the top. The grind didn't stop after Ronda. In fact, it only got harder. The spotlight magnified every move, every word, every doubt. The same humility that made her so endearing also made her struggle with the glare of fame. She didn't crave attention. She craved focus, discipline, training. But champions don't get to disappear. And so, in the weeks and months after her crowning achievement, Holly wasn't basking in glory. She was bracing herself for what came next. And that next fight would test her in ways she never anticipated. UFC 196, March 2016. Holly Holm stepped into the octagon for her first title defense. Across from her stood Miesha Tate, a tough veteran known for her wrestling and resilience. On paper, Holly was favored. After all, she had just dismantled Ronda Rousey, the same woman who had dominated Tate twice before. For 4 rounds, the script played out as expected. Holm's striking, movement, and composure kept Tate at bay. Round after round, she piled up points, slowly edging toward what looked like a safe decision victory. But MMA doesn't follow scripts. In the 5th round, Tate seized her moment. She managed to drag Holm to the ground, clamping on a rear naked choke. Holm fought with everything, refusing to tap, but her body betrayed her. She lost consciousness in the final minutes of the final round. The belt was gone. Just like that, the fairy tale reign ended. For Holly, it was devastating. Not just because she lost, but because of how she lost. She had been so close, minutes away from victory, only to have it ripped away. It exposed the brutal reality of MMA. You can dominate 23 minutes of a fight and still lose everything in a single mistake. This was the first public crack in the image of invincibility. Fans who had celebrated her triumph over Ronda now watched her stumble. And in the weeks that followed, Holly revealed the darker side, the loneliness of defeat, the sting of criticism, the way the same media that once praised her now questioned if she was a one-hit wonder. For Holly Holm, the fall was swift, and it hurt. After losing her title, Holm faced a gauntlet of killers. Unlike many champions who get tune-up fights to rebuild, Holly was thrown into the fire over and over. Valentina Shevchenko, Germaine de Randamie, Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes. The names weren't just elite. They were among the greatest women to ever compete in MMA. Holly fought all of them. She didn't duck, didn't ask for easier opponents. But the results were harsh. She went from being the undefeated giant slayer to a fighter with more losses than wins in her UFC career. For casual fans, it seemed like her star had faded, but those who understood the sport knew the truth. Holly Holm never took shortcuts. She was always fighting the toughest women available. The dark truth she began to speak about in interviews was the grind itself. She admitted that the pressure, the constant criticism, and the brutal matchmaking took a toll. It wasn't just physical, it was mental. The endless training camps, the heartbreak of close decision losses, the feeling that one magical night against Ronda defined her forever, while her struggles afterward were overlooked. Yet through it all, Holm kept going. She never retired, never gave up, never stopped competing at the highest level. Even in defeat, she carried herself with dignity. And in doing so, she revealed something powerful. That legacy isn't just about victories. It's about courage, resilience, and the willingness to keep showing up, even when the world has counted you out. Outside the cage, Holly Holm does not move like a celebrity. She moves like a teammate, early to the gym, last to leave, hands taped, head down, checklist in her mind like a metronome, pad work, drilling, road work, recovery, repeat. To the casual fan, she's the head kick that rewrote history. To the people in Albuquerque, she's the woman jogging past sunrise on tramway, then holding pads for the last amateur on the floor because they asked shyly and she said yes. That's the first truth about Holly's life beyond fight night. It's built on ordinary habits, practiced at an extraordinary level, long after the cameras turn away. Faith and family orbit everything. The nickname, the preacher's daughter, was never a marketing gimmick. It was a compass. She grew up with Sunday mornings and midweek services, a house where integrity wasn't a slogan, but a schedule. In adulthood, that translated into a quiet code. Show up on time. Keep your word. Don't talk down to people just because you can punch harder than they can. Her teammates tell the same story in different words. Holly will carry the bucket, she'll clean the ring, she'll circle back and ask if you're okay after a hard round, even when she's the one icing a rib. Humility is not packaging, it's posture. But humility doesn't insulate you from life. While her pro highlight reels loop forever, real life kept moving. Friends leaving teams, coaches changing, injuries stacking, routines bending around nagging aches, and the simple math of time. She went through a quiet divorce and chose not to turn it into a press tour. She processed personal loss the way she processes fight footage, methodically, privately, trying to understand what to do better next time, then getting back to work. The public saw a stoic figure at Media Day. The gym saw a woman who showed up anyway, who used sweat to unknot the thoughts you can't post about. There's also the economy of being Holly Holm. Fame looks shiny from the cheap seats. Up close, it's logistics and trade-offs. Every request is an opportunity and a subtraction. Say yes to the sponsors, and you say no to an hour of drilling. Say yes to the youth clinic, and she does often. And you say no to a nap your body begged for. Even social media, which can love you at breakfast and try to unmake you by lunch, becomes a job. One slow fight, and the comments turn boring, overrated, done. People who have never had two strangers close the door of a cage behind them will write essays on what courage should look like. Holly learned to read it like weather. Note the forecast, pack a jacket, go run anyway. Mentorship became a kind of shelter. Younger athletes, boxers switching to MMA, wrestlers learning to strike, women trying to figure out how to be fierce and still themselves, find her in the corner between rounds. She gives them the unglamorous advice: sleep more than you think, hydrate earlier than you want, do your prehab, Or you'll do rehab, keep your circle small and your promises smaller still. She knows the price of arriving on the biggest stage and the interest it charges afterward. She tells them the truth. Glory is momentary, character is daily, and only one of those can carry you through the long, quiet seasons when your name isn't being screamed by 50,000 people. And then there's Albuquerque. The town is both backdrop and co-author. It holds her up and holds her accountable. The grocery cashier has a cousin on her old cardio kickboxing line. The high school kid at the coffee shop shows her a shaky video of their first smoker and waits for a nod like it's a belt. This is not a city that forgets. It remembers the boxing belts, the long runs, the head kick, the losses, the comebacks, the community clinics, the times she lent her name to a charity without asking for a photo. Fame made her visible. The city made her human. And in that ordinary humanity, errands and ice packs, church pews and chain-link fences around old fields, you see the cost of being Holly Holm. Every day is a choice to remain the same person you were before the world learned your name. The dark truth seated inside this quiet life is simple and sharp. There is no finish line that fixes you, no belt that cures loneliness, no knockout that makes real life gentler. What wins do is rent you a louder room. What character does is teach you how to speak inside it. For years, Holly let her gloves speak. She nodded at pressers, gave polite answers, and saved her sharpest timing for the opening bell. Then, gradually, she began to say more. Not loud, not scandal hunting, just honest. In scattered interviews and post-fight mics, she started pulling at the curtain fighters often keep welded shut, and what she revealed was not gossip, it was gravity. She talked about the pressure nobody sees, the way sleep can fracture the closer you get to a main event, how your brain keeps shadowboxing through the dark, rehearsing the walkout, the first exchange, the takedown you need to stuff. She admitted that after the Ronda fight, the expectations became a second opponent. When you shock the world, it starts waiting for you to do it again on command. Like magic is a button you press, and when you don't, the applause can fall off a cliff. She described that silence without bitterness, like a weather report. It storms, then it clears, then it storms again. She also named the loneliness that can trail a champion. Cameras make it seem crowded, teams, entourages, media scrums, but pressure can be a private room. You can be surrounded and still be alone with the thought that your entire reputation lives inside 15 minutes of potential chaos, that one small mistake can redraw your story in ink. There's a cost to that arithmetic. It compounds, and if you never say it out loud, it can turn victories into brief breaths and camps into long-held lungs. Holly spoke about identity, the tightrope between who the public thinks you are and who you have to be to keep walking straight. There's the preacher's daughter, poster clean and forever humble. There's the competitor who will put leather on your dreams and not apologize. And there's the person who goes home afterward, looks in a mirror, and has to integrate those two truths. Being typecast as only one of them becomes its own cage. She learned to tolerate the mismatch, to let people be wrong about her on purpose, and conserve energy for places where accuracy matters. The gym, the family table, the parts of life that refuse to applaud. Even her stance when she uses a microphone, choosing moments to talk about values, about protecting what she believes matters most, about refusing to play into the ugliest forms of hype, was a reveal. She would rather hold a line than juice an algorithm. In a sport that often rewards noise, she made a different choice. Clarity over clout. That isn't always popular, but it is consistent with the woman who measured her steps long before she measured distance in cage panel paces. Then there were the fights themselves. She acknowledged the criticism, close decisions, cautious game plans, and refused to take the bait. Strategy is not fear, she explained, it's stewardship. If your toolkit is timing and distance, you don't throw it away because the crowd wants a coin toss. She accepted boos the way she accepts cheers, as weather. What matters is whether you can see the shot coming, whether you can still execute the plan while 20,000 voices are trying to drag you into a different movie. What Holly ultimately revealed is the unmarketable math that underlies greatness. Discipline is lonely, excellence is repetitive, And fame is mostly logistics, with occasional fireworks. She spoke about the days the scale steals your patience, the way a dull ache becomes a roommate who never moves out, the calendar that keeps asking for fresh pieces of you when yesterday already took its pound. She talked about doing the right thing when nobody's watching and how, paradoxically, that's what keeps you sane when everybody is. And the darkest truth, the one that lands with a quiet thud, is that winning does not solve the human condition. It rents you reprieve. You still have to do the next right thing on Tuesday morning when the house is quiet and the only person clapping is the coffee maker. You still have to find joy in the repetition, or the repetition will hollow you out. When Holly finally said these things plainly, it didn't make her more dramatic. It made her more useful to teammates, to younger fighters, to anyone trying to carry excellence without letting it carry them away. If legacy were a highlight reel, Holly Holmes would need one clip and a date stamp. November 14, 2015. Headkick, Fall of a Queen. History rewritten in 11 letters. New champion. But legacy is not footage. It's the imprint a career leaves on people who will never meet you. The blueprint it hands to strangers after you're gone from the rankings. On that measure, Holly's shadow runs long. Start with the obvious. She proved that a career can have chapters across sports and still hold together. Multiple division world titles in boxing, then a late career pivot into MMA at the highest level, then a world championship in a new discipline. That arc gave permission. You could see it in the way boxers eyed the cage after her, in the way crossover talk stopped sounding like fantasy and started sounding like a training plan. She didn't just beat a dominant champion, she widened a road. She also redefined what star power can look like. She didn't trash talk. She didn't manufacture rivalry. She stared into cameras with the same composure she carries into church pews, and still sold out arenas on the strength of credibility. In an era that often rewards volume over virtue, Holly proved there's an audience for quiet competence that spikes into violence only when the bell demands it. That matters for the next generation, especially for young women trying to figure out whether they have to become cartoons to be seen. Her answer, demonstrated, not shouted, is no. Her losses, oddly, amplify the legacy. Look at the names across from her: Shevchenko, Cyborg, Nunes, Durandamy, Tate, Mount Rushmore material, all of them. Many elite athletes manage their calendars to optimize reputation. Holm managed hers to test herself. The record you see on paper doesn't tell the whole story. The courage encoded in the matchmaking does. She kept saying yes to the steepest hills, absorbed the gravity, then showed up again. For fighters coming up, that's a map for a meaningful career, not just a glossy one.